What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. So, if you are watching this on YouTube, welcome. This is one of the first shows we are doing where we're recording the podcast and we're also going to turn it into a YouTube video. I think going into 2020, coming out of 2020, going into 2021, I think that there's going to be an opportunity. I just recently bought a laptop, so I'm going to be able to do some more video editing, and I think that's going to add to the content, which is really great. And we are making a little bit of a change to the show. So if you listen to the episodes in 2020, you know that we were almost daily. I think there were probably 20 to 25 to maybe even 30 days the whole entire year where we didn't release a new episode. But for the new year, I do want to try and record the episodes on video a little bit more, which I think that's going to lead to less shows. And maybe once I get things up to speed, I think once I can get my feet underneath me, that there may be more shows on a daily basis. But for now, I think we're going to be dialing it back this year to 3 shows, probably a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday episode. And what I think that's going to turn into is going to be 2 shows that are rundown style, kind of quick hits. Well, not really quick hits, but the show points pretty much. And then 1 interview, hopefully. And if not, then we'll probably just do a 3rd episode from that week. And if we don't get an interview, maybe there'll be just audio episodes. But like I said, we'll see kind of how it goes. And I do want to try and make the show better and make it more entertaining, but be able to make it in a way that allows me to post it on YouTube and post it on the podcast as well. And I think that just posting the episodes with a static image isn't really necessarily the way to go. And I think, like I said, now that I have the ability to do some video editing, I think that that's definitely going to help. And some of the other changes, I mean, I got a ton of feedback in 2020 towards the end of the year that there was some negative feedback that I got that I didn't necessarily disagree with, which I agreed with, I guess is another way to put it. But it was pretty much just that the shows weren't very organized. And that's something that I'm going to be trying to do more this year compared to last year, where a lot of the times, a lot of the shows that we did were just, I had a topic that I want to talk about, and then I would just go right into the episode. And I wouldn't really put too much time into preparing what the episode was going to be about. And that led to points where we were kind of getting off the path, and then even times on the episodes where I'm sure tons of you have heard it if you're listening to this or you are a fan of the show, where I'll just go off on a tangent and then I won't even remember exactly what I was talking about. So I think one of my goals is to shorten the topics and really get more information out and get it more organized, essentially. And where I think that's going to come is going to come from more preparation from the show on my part, which is something that even for this episode, I have notes that I have written out, where before that really wasn't the case. Like I said, most of the time I'd have the topic, turn the podcast on, and then next thing you know, we're 15, 20 minutes into the episode. The episodes themselves, I would like them to be around 25 to 30 minutes. I think I want to try and keep the topics more compact. Like I said, I think there were times on the episodes where I probably could have turned a 15-minute episode into a 5 to 7, maybe a 10-minute segment, where that's kind of what I want to do this year, rather than maybe 5 episodes a week with 5 different topics. Maybe do 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 topics on one episode, and also just breaking them down and maybe trying to find interesting information between all of them that can help the show, help people listening, because ultimately that's the whole kind of point of the podcast, right? It's that I wanted to create a resource for people who maybe are new into sports cards, or they're into sports cards, they're trying to learn more, or they're trying to kind of up their game when it comes to the types of cards you're looking into. So that's kind of some of the goals that I have for the show coming up in the next year, and to try and keep things a little bit tighter. That's kind of one of my goals, and just really bring everything back into a little bit more information, make it a little bit more easier to listen to, for sure. So that's exciting. I'm excited to get into that. And as we are finishing 2020 up, I wanted to take a quick look back at the year and discuss some of the important topics that happened, important things. I mean, I think we saw sports cards really just explode in 2020. Like, we saw the eBay growth, which I talked about on a previous episode, where overall the sales growth was over 300%. And eBay also reported that over 45 million cards were sold in 2020, which is roughly about 123,000 a day if you divide it by the 365 days, or if there was a leap year. I don't think it was a leap year, but either way, around 123,000 cards were sold per day on eBay. Like I said, that's a 300% increase. So, I mean, what kind of attributed to that? I think as somebody who was making content in 2018 into 2019, and then obviously throughout 2020, I saw the signs that this could happen. Like, I mean, it's basically why I started the podcast, because I wanted to be a part of the growth of the hobby, just the same way that, like, you know, somebody who maybe they were making Pokemon content, and then Pokemon Go comes out, and then Pokemon explodes, which is another. Pokemon exploded again in 2020 for a bunch of different reasons, but the example that I'm using, that I wanted to be a part of the growth and help people in their journey. And I do think that sometimes the content can get a little bit out there. I definitely will admit that I find myself talking about stuff that maybe I'm only interested in, and I think that's sort of the way I want to go about it, in a way. I want to create content that I'm interested in. Like, I think you definitely can make content in the sports card industry and kind of fabricate some of the information, not fabricate the information, but fabricate some of your knowledge on the information. And that's not to say I have all the information. I think I go on record all the time saying that, like, there's stuff that I'm learning every day, and I'm making mistakes almost on a daily basis. So this 2020 really, and I'm not going to really talk about COVID, because, like, I'm sure anybody else who's done their 2020 review has talked about it at length. And, you know, I think it affected cards, and I think it affected it in a good way, but I don't necessarily think it was the ultimate factor on why cards kind of did what they did this year. We saw some crazy cards sell. We saw the 1-of-1 Mike Trout. We saw 2 1-of-1 Giannis. Oh, actually, it was 3. We saw the National Treasures. We saw the 1-of-1 Prism Black, Prism Black rookie card, and then also the Prism. I think it was the Prism Black autograph sell. So those were some crazy Giannis cards. We also saw a bunch of crazy LeBron cards. It all started out with the LeBron Jordan exquisite logo man that sold at the beginning of the year for $900,000. And I think that it was a combination of sports cards really exploding. There was also The Last Dance, which for sports fans, that was basically all we had for sports, to be completely honest, when we were talking once sports got canceled, essentially at the end of probably the midway through March-ish. I'd say that's when sports got canceled. The Last Dance, I think, was one of the big factors in why sports cards blew up. And that Jordan LeBron card, I think, was monumentous, because I think that brought a very significant amount of people into the hobby. We also saw the exquisite LeBron sell for $1.8 million. We've seen which the exquisite LeBron that sold for 1.8 was the number to 23, where some of the other exquisites were numbered to 99. Those also sold for crazy amounts. So the 1-of-1 Mike Trout that sold for $3.8 million is just absolutely wild. And I think that's the type of card that in our lifetimes, I'm 28, I'll be turning 29 next April. 27. Whatever. I was born in 93, so I'm not going to do the math off the top of my head. But that may not ever sell again in our lifetime. Like, it may be a card that the person that bought it says, I'm just going to either keep this until Mike Trout is retired in the Hall of Fame. Maybe he becomes some sort of humanitarian or whatever. Maybe he becomes more popular than he is now. But I think the person that's buying that card, for it to go from where it went from 400,000 in 2018, May of 2018, and then for it to then sell in 2020 for $3.9 million. I'll be interested to see where that growth continues and how it continues and what ends up happening with that card. And like I said, I don't know if we'll ever see that card sell again. We saw celebrities getting into. We saw Logan Paul and Logic getting into Pokemon. Obviously, the PSA 10 first edition Shadowless Charizard continues to go up in value. There was a video of Logan Paul buying one for $150,000, and then next thing you know, there's one selling for $300,000. So, that was a crazy time. And then Logic being one of the people Logic being the person that bought because it went from Logan Paul buying it for $150, and then it once sold in Golden Auctions or Heritage Auctions. I forget which one it was off the top of my head, but it was one of the auction houses. It sold for $180, which plus the buyer's premium comes out to around $220. So, and that was Logic that bought that card. We saw growth all over Pokemon. I mean, I think I'd be interested to see the growth in how popular the genre or the cards were from this year compared to when Pokemon Go first came out, because I think that's always the example that I've used realistically with doing this content. That's the example I've used earlier in the video, where I want to be a part of the growth in sports cards the same way that someone was a part of the growth in Pokemon. And I've used this expression, like, are sports cards going to have a Pokemon Go type moment? And I think there's a chance that it could, but I think realistically we're going to continue to see like smaller spikes and then maybe either some decreases or some more flatline growth, and then another one and then another one. And I don't think it's necessarily, because if you think back to 2016 or 2017, whenever Pokemon Go came out, like, think about the amount of people that were playing that. Like, I used to live in Boston. I moved out of Boston, but when I lived there, when that game first came out, there was the Starbucks and the building next door were like, there was a gym and a Pokemon Center, I think, right in that area. So, like, I don't think there was a day that went by that I didn't see a group of people either playing, or I saw like guys with multiple different phones. I mean, there was so much strange stuff that happened around the release of that game. So I'd be interested to see if that versus this year, how much more growth there was in that market. We saw other celebrities like Gary Vee talking about sports cards. We saw Dan Fleischman and Steve Aoki open up a shop in California. Like, we saw Rob Kardashian getting into football cards, and all of these celebrities, I think, have helped. And then, I mean, there are players that talked about sports cards in 2020 as well. LeBron was asked during the finals about his $1.8 million sports card, and he said that he has them now. Granted, I think for a lot of us, we know that there's a ton of different LeBron rookies that he could maybe own. So, like, I don't know if he owns the exquisite one or whatever he has, but Giannis also showed off his card collection. Patrick Mahomes posted a card on his Instagram story. Luka recently talked about it. So we saw celebrities and athletes kind of talking about sports cards in a way that we hadn't seen in the past. And I think there are so many different moments for cards that honestly, it's sort of even hard to put it all into just one video, because there were so many great moments. And I mean, other moments for the podcast, at least if you're listening to this on YouTube or however, but for the podcast, like, we had tons of great guests come on the show. We went on, or I went on a bunch of different shows. I was on the Ask Gary Vee show. I was on Slapstocks. If you listen to the podcast the past few weeks, that you obviously heard most of those interviews. And I think in those interviews, I feel like I was fairly optimistic. I feel like maybe my outlook on the hobby and cards in general is a bit more optimistic than I think maybe most people are. And I think that kind of gets me into what I'll talk about last on this first and today's episode of the podcast is going to be my predictions for 2021. Now, I want to start out, I post on Instagram, I post on Twitter, and this is the podcast where we're going to be talking about it. So the first one was that there was going to be a Mantle PSA 10 that sells, and I think that we've seen holy grails of what a bunch of different sports sell. We saw the Mike Trout 1 of 1 sell. We saw the O-Pee-Chee Wayne Gretzky PSA 10 sell. That was another one that was an insane sale for that I didn't mention in the previous segment, but we saw that one sell for $1.2 million. We saw LeBron's. We saw all of these crazy cards sell and go up insane in value. Like the PSA 9, and we'll go back to this. So the PSA 9 version of the Mantle sold in 2018 for $2.8 million. And that wasn't even the PSA 10. That was the PSA 9. There's 6 PSA 9s and there's 3 PSA 10s. So the one PSA 10, I don't know if even one has sold in the past. And if it went through a private sale previously, there is a chance that I think one of those cards could have sold in the past few years, maybe even after the PSA 9 $2.8 million sale. Maybe there was a private sale of one of these PSA 10s, but with there only being 3 of them, that card, in my opinion, is probably a $15 to $20 million card, and it is the type of card that I feel like it may have to go through a private auction. It may not go through Golden auctions or Heritage auctions, but I just think that card has so much staying power in the hobby. Like if you ask people what the holy grail of all cards are, they're probably going to say either a high-graded Honus Wagner or this PSA 10 Mantle card. Now, the story behind the card is pretty interesting. It was one of Topps' first set. If it wasn't, it might have even been the first set. They overproduced it a lot. Like they really had an issue selling this set itself. So like half of the set, at least from the stories that I've heard, about half of the set got tossed into the Atlantic Ocean. So I don't even know how many Mantle cards, like if you were, and I don't know what the print run of that would have been compared to maybe what it is now, but with there only being that one top set, for those cards to just be gotten rid of, that obviously adds to the allure of this PSA 10 because, Mantle isn't necessarily the best player of all time. Like, he's definitely one of the best, probably has one of the highest WARs in the history of the sport. So this Mantle PSA 10, I think that we're going to see a sale of it. And like I said, there's so much staying power with that card. That's why I almost think that somebody may not necessarily want to go through a private auction. If this is a company or someone that owns the card that has some sort of company that they could use marketing of, first, selling a card for $15 million is like, if you're getting $15 million from one thing, like you're basically selling, you're almost like selling a company. And that's first of all, that's wild. But like the news around that card, I feel like would be as valuable from a marketing standpoint as would just the sale of the card itself, because you are selling. Look at all of the other cards that sold. Look how much publicity the Trout got on ESPN. All of these top places are writing about these sports cards that are selling. If you're selling a $15 million one, like it's going to be probably the highest sale. It's obviously going to be the highest sale by 3x, which the Trout, and then there was also a Honus Wagner that sold this year for, I believe it was $3.2 million. But so the Trout card, that sold for 3.8. If you're saying that's, so 5x, so if you're, or just below 5, because if you're going from 4 to 15 or 20, kind of depending on what the price ends up being. So that's why I think we're going to see all these other cards selling. I think that's why we're probably going to see a PSA 10 Mantle sell in the 52 Mantle sell in 2021. I'm still getting used to saying the actual date here. So my next prediction is that there's going to be more companies that either get funding or get sold, similar to the PSA deal, which sold, Collectors Universe sold to Stephen Cohen's investment group with Nat Turner, sold for $700 million. And then we're also probably going to see companies like StarStock, for example. They raised $1.3 million in a round of funding with investors like Kevin Durant and AJ Vaynerchuk. Huge. I think Matthew Dellavedova, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He also was part of this investment group that put money into that. So I'm wondering where that money is going to be spent for StarStock. Probably in marketing, if I had to guess. But like the fact that an athlete got in on this, I think, and especially with it being Kevin Durant, I think Kevin Durant has been one of the wildest runs of within sports cards from a price standpoint, because he's a top 5 player probably of this generation, guaranteed Hall of Famer. And now that he's sort of getting into cards now, which is very, very insane. So I think there's going to be more deals that are like that, whether it's another platform selling or it's another company that comes and gets funding with something. So I think more money is going to be spent within the hobby in this fashion, and that's something I'm super excited about. Obviously, having I sort of have a company in this space, so seeing the funding that's going into other companies in the hobby now. Obviously, I'm not Star Stock, I'm not PSA, but I think I'm a growing entity within this hobby, and that's what I've been trying to do this whole time. So I don't know, maybe if there's any investors out here that want to invest in the Heroes for Sale brand, like I'm not actively looking, but who knows? Who knows what could happen in this year? And then my final prediction. Now, this one is a prediction that I've gone back and forth on the podcast about what I think is exactly going to happen. And posting this on Instagram, I did see some people who disagreed with me, and I think that it is going to be that sports cards are going to start getting into casinos. So what I think eventually will happen is I think a casino like the MGM Grand or the Wynn Casino, or maybe even the Barstool Casino, because they've been getting kind of into the action a little bit with sports cards, I think that they're going to buy one of the, like a ComC, or they're going to buy Star Stock, or they're going to buy one of these companies, and they're going to put the entity into a casino. They're going to somehow get you're either going to be able to bet with cards, or you're going to be able to buy and sell maybe in a studio. And I think breaking is almost inevitable at this point, because one of the interesting things that I saw when I posted this on Instagram was that someone said that the casinos are only going to want to put a game into their casino where they have the edge. And in my head I was like, but don't breakers have the edge? Do they not? They're going to put some of these high-end products, I think. And I could almost even see, I don't know if this would happen this year, but I could see Topps and Panini coming out with some sort of casino set where they either use an existing product or they make up their own new product, and they put the casino branding along with this product, and it gets broken in casinos. I could see that happening, or I could see some sort of card shop maybe going into a casino as well. Because if you are, the example that I've used is that if you're watching the games, if you're at a sports book and you're watching March Madness, or you're there watching some sort of NFL Sunday, or some sort of college football Saturday, if you have the chance to sit there with your friends all day and hang out and open a bunch of boxes of cards, it seems like that's something that is a sports related activity that I don't see why wouldn't be something that a casino wouldn't think about doing. Because granted, I've been talking about why don't card companies raise the prices on retail, and people are saying, well, it's the MSRP, and but I don't understand, and this is something maybe I need to look into a little bit more, but I don't necessarily understand who controls who charges what for what. We're already seeing card companies raise prices on boxes. So this, for an example, if you're in the casino, I don't see why can't the casino, because they do it with bottles of alcohol. So, and I understand it's not a 1-to-1 comparison there, but they upcharge. If you go to a club or something, you're going to be paying 10 times whatever. You're going to be paying a ton more for a bottle of alcohol at a club. So why can't they do that with sports cards as well? And the reason why I think that they could end up buying some sort of entity and putting that entity into the casino itself is mainly just because if you're opening these boxes of cards and people want to sell the cards and either get money for the casino or get money for more boxes, they should probably be able to offer that, and they probably would have to have some sort of online platform to be able to offer that type of money to people in the casino that want to do that. So those are the main predictions that I have for 2021. I think one of my other ones was that retail is going to change in somehow, but I'm not 100% sure. I've continued to kind of think about how it could change, and I'm just not 100% sure how it's going to, because I just don't know if it's all going to depend on what the card companies want to do. And this is the reason why I didn't put in my predictions, because I can't predict what the card companies want to do here. Because they obviously don't want people flipping the product or they probably don't want, it's not that they obviously don't want, they probably don't want people flipping the product. Mainly because that's money coming out of their pocket when someone's buying it on the secondary market. Now, sure, you could say that's helping their brand, but I would argue that, does Panini or Topps, do they need to help grow their brand, on the secondary market? Anybody buying stuff on the secondary market, most likely, especially if you're buying a box, most likely Topps and Panini. So, I don't necessarily think that they need to grow their audience on the secondary market. I think that they could raise the prices. They could make the boxes. They could put them behind glass. I know that some places are making it so you can only buy 2 at a time. So I mean, that's something that I think probably going forward continues to happen in more locations. Because I put this out on Twitter as well. I'm very torn between retail because I want people to make money in the hobby, but I also want people to be able to get boxes. And that's kind of my main stance on retail and flipping retail, is that I'm glad that people can buy retail and flip it and make money, but at the same time, like I said, I want regular people and card collectors to be able to find these products on shelves. And if they're flipping for double and triple, that's the reason why you're just not seeing them on the shelves. So that's all I've got for today's episode. I want to thank you all for joining me here, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you go follow on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all those places. Thank you all. I will see you in the next episode.